Hello and welcome to the Posers Podcast, the place where we skip the fluff, say the quiet parts out loud, and dig into what really matters. This is where photography, psychology, and business collide. I'm Jody, your host, and I'm bringing you my raw takes, hard wins, and a whole lot of unfiltered honesty about what it takes to build a photography business that actually connects and makes money. So ladies, grab your headphones and get your tits up and your ears open because we are going to build something really incredible together. Well, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Posers Podcast, my beautiful posers. I want to talk to you today about collaborations. And when I talk about collaborations, I want to make sure that you don't think that I am talking about gifting somebody a free photo shoot in hopes that they will tag a post or shout you out online or something like that. That is an influencer or an affiliate program, and I have never done a photo shoot like that throughout the whole entire life of my business. What I do mean by the word collaboration is something way bigger. And by the end of this episode, you will have a playbook that you can take today and you can inject it straight into your business in order to increase your bookings. In fact, towards the end of this episode, I'm going to give you 7 steps to do exactly that. So almost every meaningful piece of business growth that you will ever experience will come from being inside of a room with someone or a group of people, obviously, that has access to your ideal clients. Now, that room can be a birthday party, it can be a Pilates studio grand opening, it can be a medical conference, it can be a wedding, it can be anything really. But your entire job in that room is to be magnetic. It is to be so genuinely yourself, so clearly excellent at what you do, that people inside of that room want to bring you home to their audience, or even just bring you home to their people, or bring you home into their world personally. Now, this is not some new strategy that I have invented, okay? The first marketing collaboration probably happened, 5 minutes. Literally, it happened 5 minutes after the very first business was ever born. I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of years ago that was. But the original collaboration wasn't a studio and a med spa. It was a farmer, a potter, and some dude with a donkey figuring out how to make money together. So a collab isn't some kind of new wave of a business hack. It is actually really foundational, and it's how I built almost my entire business. So whenever I was shooting weddings, I understood something early on that changed everything for me. Every wedding that I walked into was basically like the bride and groom were serving me a platter of my ideal clients. And back whenever I was wedding photographer, this was happening every single weekend. So think about what a wedding actually is. You're standing in a room full of people who are mostly the same age as the couple, who have the same income level, who have the same social circle, people who are likely at a very similar life stage, which means that many of them are either recently engaged, maybe about to be engaged, have friends who are engaged, and they're all watching you work. So whenever I was building the wedding side of my business, this was obviously really important for me. But even bigger than that, there's also people in that room who are a few years older, who are already married, who are already starting to have families. And then also there's a group of people, obviously, that the parents of the couple have invited who are much more financially stable, and they're starting to have grandbabies. So in that sense, these weddings that I was photographing were able to serve both sides of my business that I was building during that time, because I have always been a portrait photographer. But years and years ago, whenever I was first starting out, I was first a wedding photographer who also shot families. And now I am straight up just a portrait photographer. So back then, I made a decision that I was going to treat every single wedding that I shot as if it was a collaboration between my business and the wedding itself, a collaboration between my business and what the bride and groom were offering to me. So during cocktail hour, especially, I mean, I would do this for the whole entire wedding, especially the reception and the cocktail hour, but really during the cocktail hour, I worked that room like I was auditioning to be each one of their photographers. I was not just capturing the event. I was there to photograph the wedding, yes, but I was also performing for every single person that was in that space. And I made people feel something whenever I pointed my camera at them. And I made it fun and I made it an experience. I was fully, visibly, undeniably what I would call photographer Jody, right? The version of me who shows up when it is time to work. So my posing method was actually born inside of this environment because of what I would do and say to immediately relax clients and to get incredible images of them within seconds. And this worked threefold for my business because it relaxed the client, it created a great photograph, and it made the people in front of my camera actually feel something about being in front of my camera in a way that nobody had ever done for them before. So with that mindset, it was like every room is full of my next clients, and my job was to prove that to them. It was to prove to them that they were going to hire me it was my job to let them see who I am when I'm working. And that is really and truly what built the bulk of my audience and the bulk of my clientele that I still have today. It was not from ads. It was not from cold outreach. I have tons of funnels inside of my business, but the funnels is not what builds my business. The room that I was in, or the outdoor space that I was in, whichever it was during those weddings, and doing that over and over and over again, that is what built my clientele. So what I'm going to tell you about today is just kind of like the latest version of, now that I'm not shooting weddings anymore, it's like the latest version of my same approach to continuing to have this in my business. Because now the way that it happened just recently, it wasn't a wedding. Obviously, it was at a warehouse sale. And instead of being hired to be there as the photographer, I was there as a client. I was actually supposed to be at Lowe's looking at planners, but I decided to do something way more fun. All right. So I'm going to start off by telling you actually like how it happened, because it's not necessarily like what you would expect. If I said to you like, oh, hey, I have this collaboration brewing, it's not the way that you would think it would have happened. So I didn't go looking for it. At the time, I wasn't in strategy mode. I wasn't scouting businesses with like my ideal clients and mapping out some sort of partnership plan. I wasn't cold outreaching to businesses online or anything like that. I was literally supposed to be going to Lowe's to look at planters. My husband and I were out running errands either last weekend or the weekend before, I don't remember. And it clicked into my head because I wanted to go look at planters because we just built the pool out in the backyard. And so it clicked into my head that Grouse House, which is a business here in town, obviously was having a warehouse sale. And I had never been to Grouse House before, but an interior design client that I have had in my business who I did branding work for, she's been sending me their Instagram for weeks and telling me that I would absolutely love it. In fact, she had been trying to get us there together because like her and I hit it off so easily. And both of us love the same kind of vibe, same kind of aesthetic. And so she was like, let's go together, which we just hadn't been able to sort of like get together on both of our calendars. But my husband and I were already out. So we were already driving. And I said to my husband, I was like, you know what? Instead of going to Lowe's, we should actually go to Grouse House. And that was like, that's the origin story. That's how it genuinely and originally happened. It also was a very expensive decision because a planter at Lowe's will maybe put you back like 50, 60, 70 bucks or something. But a planter at Grouse House, I discovered, will put you back a couple $1,000s. But that expensive decision led to also being like a lucrative decision in the way that Lowe's could never for me, because I walked out of Grouse House planning collaboration and a shoot on my calendar, which with Lowe's, I would have walked out with a basic planter and maybe, I don't know, a boiled hot dog from the food truck that sits outside of Lowe's. That would definitely, I'm not going down that route. That's way too much information. I'm just saying it would have done some things to your girl's stomach, okay? But I also walked out of Grouse House having spent $1,000 on a set of vintage dishes that I had been hunting for. So either there's, you know what, there's pros and cons to both sides is what I'm telling you. But the pros on the side of Grouse House are far bigger than anything that Lowe's could have ever done for me. Okay. So a few weeks before any of this had happened, like I said, an interior design client of mine had sent me their Instagram and basically said, you need to go here. You will die. This is literally your soul inside of a building. And she was right. So I had stalked Grouse House's Instagram and I had seen the space. I saw all of the vintage European furniture, the sourced pieces, the planters, the aesthetic, the rustic sort of French countryside tables that they have in there that just make me absolutely swoon. And I understood immediately that this was a business run by people who see the world the same way that I do. And I actually honestly was not thinking about a collaboration then. But in hindsight, I want to point out that the alignment that I felt for their business to mine, that part was really important. I had already fallen in love with them before I ever stepped foot inside of their warehouse. So whenever my husband and I were out doing their errands and I remembered that the warehouse sale was open that weekend, it wasn't so much of a random detour. It really felt like an alignment. It felt like this pull for me that I already knew what was in there. I already knew that I was going to love it. And I already knew that I wanted to be like going to that warehouse and putting myself in that environment, but I just hadn't had the chance to make it happen. And now I finally did. So when we got to there, I started making Instagram stories on the way in, not because I was thinking about strategy quite yet, and not because I had some big, huge plan to, you know, tag them and start a relationship and do this collaboration and do all of that, but because I knew that I was already going to be obsessed with it. And this is how I have always run my social media. This is just how I live. I document the things that I'm doing that I know will provide entertainment value to my audience also. And I also just really love to authentically be hyping up other people's businesses. So the real unscripted, this is just my Saturday kind of content has really done more for my personal brand than any polished portfolio post ever has, because it doesn't just show people what I do. It pulls them inside of my life. It makes them feel like they know me, and it makes them feel like they're a part of the build of my business. And whenever people feel like they know you, then they trust you way faster. They trust you before they've ever even had a single sales conversation with you. The audience that books you without hesitation is the audience that is kind of built in these really personal in-between moments. That's the content that keeps people really invested in a deeper relationship building kind of way. So I obviously started to make stories before I ever even turned the corner to see what was inside the warehouse. And then I walked in and it was exactly what I thought it would be. So I'm walking around and I continue to make behind the scenes videos. I'm just talking to my camera, saying out loud what's rolling through my head, that this warehouse is literally an extension of me. It is a representation of, if my soul, my aesthetic design soul were to live outside of my body, that's what this warehouse was. Because the vintage pieces, the sourcing from the south of France and Italy, the specific kind of beauty that comes from things with age and history and curation and taste, it is completely aligned with everything that I love and everything that I also try to represent in my business. And that's whenever I had the thought, I need to make sure that I have an introduction to the owner of this business, because in that moment, that's when my business habits kicked in knowing that this would be a really good strategic partnership. Because what I used to do with weddings, when I had that sort of clientele in front of me, that transitioned right over into knowing that my ideal clients were walking around that space with me too. And I know that my ideal clients are also her ideal clients. All right. But also on a personal side, I just knew that I needed to know this person because clearly we are the same kind of human. So I didn't walk in thinking about business development. I walked in as myself, someone who genuinely loves design, who was looking for gorgeous planters to adorn the corners of my new pool, but also someone who loves these beautiful old things. So the connection was obvious because it was authentic, because it was real. I didn't expect that what I would actually find was a set of vintage dishes that I fell head over heels in love with, because I had actually been hunting for a perfect set of dishes like these on Facebook Marketplace for, I don't know, at least the last 4 or 5 months or something. So no matter what happened, whether we had a business collaboration or not, I was buying those dishes because I wasn't in there for the business collaboration. I was in there because I was a customer, because I loved all of that. So whenever I found them, it wasn't like I'll buy something to make a good impression here, or I'll scratch your back so you scratch mine. It was not that. It was authentically that I wanted them. I'd been wanting something like them for a very long time, and they were everything that I had been looking for. So the purchase was already decided before I ever even talked to the owner. But whenever I did introduce myself to the owner, we immediately hit it off. Obviously, I'm not surprised by that. It did not feel like networking, which is the best kind of networking. It was just two people who clearly love the same things in a space that is literally built for us, and two people who are talking like they've known each other for forever. She was telling me about flying to the south of France and Italy to source these vintage pieces, and I was telling her, oh my God, I'm about to be in Italy. Like, how close is Parma to Venice? We were just having this really good conversation, and honestly, her life sounds like a fever dream for me, okay? It is the kind of life where your job is to have incredible taste and go out hunting and gathering for beautiful old things in European markets. Give me a break. I was literally just enchanted by everything that she does. So that's not a pitch strategy. That's just some people are your people and you know it immediately. So I told her while I was talking to her in the store also that I had been tagging them in my stories. And of course, she was very gracious and she thanked me for doing that. Probably not really knowing the size of my audience that I have in our city or how obsessed with design I actually am. So I kept going with my posts. I went home and I did a whole entire story series, and I showed the dishes in my kitchen, which is literally basically built for those dishes. I'm actually recording at home right now, which I hardly ever do. I usually record in the studio. So if you hear my dog lapping up water right now and my other dog scratching at his collar and making the metal piece of his collar make these little ring-a-ding-a-ding sort of noises, then I'm so sorry. I really hope that we're able to cut that out of the audio. But at the same time, you guys know that I'm building this business inside of my life, and that a lot of my content gets driven by what I'm actually just doing during my real life time. So I actually don't mind that my real life is seeping into the podcast a little bit right now. And I know you guys all love Cooper too. So great. Now he's going to go about eating his food. So he's going to be crunching in the background too. But he is literally standing in the kitchen eating his dog food, the exact same kitchen that I'm talking about, with these dishes. So I showed the dishes in my kitchen, which like I said, was basically like built for them. I showed me stacking them into my very cottagey looking cabinets, and I set it to a welcome home type of music, as if the dishes were like my long lost children who had finally found their way back to their mother. My dishes were basically on like Homeward Bound. Okay. They came like running over the hill, like finding their family again. So then I kept going. I went in even further by making sure that my personality really stood out in this content, and by making a really silly story of me pouring cereal into a really like intricately designed serving bowl, which like has this pedestal underneath it. It was so ridiculous, but I paired it with I'm So Fancy playing as the music. I made content that was actually for them rather than just being like about them, content that they'd actually want to repost because it represented where their pieces ended up really well. It showed the transformation from dishes on a shelf in a warehouse to being cozy in their new home without a crack in the branding of both of our businesses, without a crack in the level of design that both of our businesses are associated with. So then, of course, they reposted it. And then, just as I was hoping, she slid into my DMs, which is where the real connection started to happen. So I want to read you part of this conversation because I think it's important for you to see how like unstrategic it really felt. She came in to my DMs very warm and completely enthusiastic, telling me how much they had loved my posts, how her and her daughter had watched them over and over, and how they were already obsessed with me. And I'm just responding genuinely, telling her that I love design even more than photography, thanking her, just having a real conversation, which was genuine and authentic. And then kind of midstream, I casually, in the same exact message where I had just asked her to order me a candle, because I had also purchased a candle that is the most insanely incredible scent that I have ever smelled. And I wanted a second one for the studio. So in between like lines about me saying, hey, can you order me another one of these candles because it's literally so good. Then I also wrote this one line. I said, I'd love to find a way to collaborate on a fun weekend at your warehouse. Maybe my audience gets their session fee waived for everyone who makes a purchase from you guys. And that was it. There was no formal proposal. There was not a separate message. There was not an email. There was not some sort of like subject line of let's collab. It was just, hey, I've been thinking about this. Here's a rough idea, mixed with like my candle order, because I was still loving her business at the same time. So she wrote back and said, I literally think that you are our new best friend. We both watched these posts over and over. She's talking about her and her daughter. She said, we both watched these posts over and over again, literally laughing out loud at your cereal bowl. You are so funny. And we already love you. Cannot believe that we just met you. And then her next line said, yes to all collaborations. Let's brainstorm. So after that, the conversation keeps going though, because we keep on talking about being hermits. We keep on talking about Venice and Parma and antique fairs, and just two people who really each other, figuring out when we can get together, when we can have lunch. Okay. And then inside of that conversation, I planted another seed that her and her daughter and her puppy, actually, who was roaming the warehouse as we shopped, needed to have a patriarch. Oh my God, get out of here. I can't believe I just said that. I talk about hating the patriarchy so much that just literally Freudian slipped into our episode. Get it out of here. No, I said that she needed to do a matriarch shoot. So she wrote back and she was like, what is a matriarch shoot? And yes, we need one. So I sent her a video of what a matriarch shoot was, because I had just been doing them. And she said, absolutely gorgeous, but I want to make sure that my mom is there too. And this only happened because I wasn't hesitant to pitch my business because I knew that I could create something incredible for her, knowing that we have the same aesthetic. And all that she had to do was step into it. Okay. Now, I want to address why this podcast topic ever came up to begin with, because I posted inside of my posers group that I am not all talk. I told them that I walk the walk in my business with the exact strategies that I'm teaching to them. And I wrote basically a Cliff Notes version of this whole entire story that I'm telling you right here. And whenever I did that, a few questions came up. And my girl, Laura, this is Laura with Laura Stansberry Photography, who, please go follow her. She is hysterical and amazing, like all wrapped up into one. She's just incredible. Go follow her. Her content it tickles me. I die laughing at her content all the time. She's building and running an absolutely incredible business. So go follow her. But Laura named something that maybe a lot of you are having a hard time with too. She said that whenever she tries to do collaborations, her pattern goes a little bit like this, that she would meet someone, that she would connect with them, that she would have this conversation of, oh, hey, me and you should do this collaboration. Yet somehow she ends up giving a session away for free, and including the images. So not only the service, but also the product, that she's giving that away for free with the promise that they're going to post about it or, give a shout out on their platform. And this happens, then they make one post about it, but then they disappear. And she's done all of the work and had no return on it. Okay. And then Laura also asked, what's the mindset piece that she's missing between building a relationship and giving away her services? So here's what I want to say first before I get into the tactical answer. It's that the issue might not be with your boundaries. It might be that you're trying to create connections that aren't naturally there. Like whenever I walked into Grouse House, I wasn't trying to make something happen. I was just being myself in a space that happened to be full of my people. The connection with the owner was immediate and effortless because we genuinely share the same kind of sensibility. I wasn't performing any form of generosity. I actually just wanted to buy the dishes. I wanted to have these conversations. I was making the content for my business already. So I wasn't manufacturing content at that time. I was really just actually obsessed with the space. So whenever a collaboration grows out of something so real, the whole dynamic is very different. And she came to me, the owner of Grouse House came to me into my DMs. I didn't have to create a pitch. I didn't have to follow up. I just dropped casual lines inside of our very natural conversation about collaborating. And the answer was obviously yes to everything. So that's what happens whenever the fit is real. Now, on the tactical side of Laura's question, here's the line that I want you guys to really hold on to, because you should still be doing collaborations, even if you do have to contact the business and set up a meeting with the owner and give a cold pitch. So on the tactical side of things, I want you to remember that a collaboration is an exchange of access, and that's it. It is not an exchange of a free product. It is not an exchange of a free service. It is not you having to say, oh, hey, I'll photograph all of this and I'll do all this for you for free if you say something about my business. It's not that at all. Whenever I proposed this collaboration with Grouse House, I said my audience gets a waived session fee for everyone who makes a purchase from you. So her audience is having to buy something first to get something from me. So she has the sale, and then her audience gets a gift, and then I get in front of a warm, ideal client before my fall launch is happening. So I also know that I will promote it on my social media and get her more clients in the door too. So nobody's giving anything away. Both businesses have skin in the game. Okay. What Laura was describing by giving away a session for free in exchange for a post, that is an influencer deal. That is an affiliate deal. That's not a collaboration. In a real collaboration, both parties are offering each other access to their audiences. So it is your audience that has the real value. You're not the junior partner in the deal who has to give away a free service or a free product. You're bringing something equally real to the table because your audience is the value add, not you as the photographer. You are searching access to their audience. They are searching access to yours. All right. Now, whenever the Matriarch session got introduced, that was just her choosing to invest in me as a client, the same way that I chose to invest in her as a client. That is separate from the collaboration entirely. She just wanted to experience what I do. I didn't offer it as a trade. I didn't offer it as a goodwill gesture. I simply pointed at something that I offer saying, hey, this would be really cool for you. And she agreed. So when you're going into these collaborations, you absolutely have to protect the value of your work and negotiate the access to your clientele, not freebies that you can offer as a photographer. Okay. So here's a bit of the playbook. Now, I don't want to over strategize this because part of the lesson here is that it worked because it was so aligned. But there are things that you can do to create these conditions for this kind of connection also. So, step one, you want to know your aesthetic, and you also want to live inside of that aesthetic publicly. Okay. I had obviously been stalking Grouse House's Instagram for weeks before I ever walked in. I constantly create content that actually reflects who I am, and you should be doing the same. Okay. Your taste, your values, your sensibility, not a curated performance of who you want to be, but actually who you are. All right. You should go to the place. Step two, you should go to the places that call to you. Go places that you go. And there's a really huge likelihood that your ideal client will be there too. All right. When your taste is genuinely aligned with your ideal client, it makes this authentic type of content so much easier. And then the places that you love are the places that they love. So you simply have to show up there as yourself. And then step three, you are making content in the moment because there is strategy behind that content, but it is in the moment. So it is authentic. Just like I did, I started making stories on the way into the warehouse because I was already excited. Not because the plan was already in place, but because the content was good, because the feeling was real, because that is actually what I was excited to be doing with my weekend. And your audience will be able to tell that difference. Okay. Step four, you want to make the connection when it's obvious, even if it makes you nervous, even if you have to step outside of your comfort zone, even if you have to stick your hand out to shake a hand, to say, hi, I want to meet you. Sometimes that can be hard, but you have to make that connection. I knew that I needed to meet the owner because everything about that space told me that we were the same kind of person. And that's a signal worth following. Whenever you are pulled to that, follow it. You don't have to just engineer a reason. You don't have to have a collab right on the tip of your tongue. You don't even have to pitch anything to them right there, just like I didn't do. You just introduce yourself and you are genuine. If I had tried to push the collaboration right then, it would have been too forced. And she was in work mode. She was selling. She was on her sales floor. She was not in CEO mode right then. So I let the relationship build and I let it breathe a little bit until it felt right that I wanted to be actually pitching the idea of us merging our businesses. Okay. Step 5, create content for them. After I left, I made the story series. It was not a generic tag. It was a real portrait of their business that made them look like they were worth telling the story of. That's what gets reposted. That's what brought her into my DMs. It wasn't a pic of the outside of her warehouse that had a mention or a tag or a shout out like, quotes, shopped here today and it was so good. I did not do that. I made them content that they could actually use inside of their business too. I told that story. I showed the transformation of their product from warehouse to home. Okay. Step number 6, drop the collaboration seed casually when the relationship is warm. Not a formal proposal, not a pitch, just I've been thinking about this. Here's a rough idea. What do you think? And tuck that into your warm conversation. If the fit is real, then the answer will be enthusiastic. If you don't have a warm way to introduce yourself and get inside of your business, or you do have to create the cold pitch, that is powerful too. It's just a different format. And I think that we'll go over that in next week's episode, actually. But what I will still say here on step number 6 is that even if you're doing a cold pitch, even if you go and you sit, say, at a cute little brunch spot with somebody and you don't feel a cute little brunch spot, don't start with the pitch. Don't go in cold just saying, hey, I want something from you. I can give something back. Not going into it like that, making sure that it is still something that you are pitching when that conversation is warm and when you feel like your two businesses actually have alignment. But we will go over a lot of that in next week's episode. Okay. I don't have that planned out yet. I don't know what that's going to look like. So I can't speak to it right here in this moment, but I will make sure that we go over that. Okay. All right. And then finally, step number 7, plant the specific seeds for your services also. Pay attention to who they are. See what they actually need as clients of yours, not just as people, as a person. Okay. Remember how I painted the picture of a very specific type of shoot that she should be booking with me? And I phrased it in a way that I said, oh my God, you should do a Matriarch shoot with me. She had to come back asking what the Matriarch session is. And that was very intentional that I worded it that way, because then I knew that I could come back and I could show her a video of one that I had already photographed. And painting that picture is always way easier than saying, oh, you should book a session, right? Or it's not, hey, I could do a photo shoot for you. It's like, no, hey, you should seriously do this Matriarch session with me. It would be so stunning. It would be so beautiful for you and your daughter and your little puppy, right? And then she has to ask what that Matriarch session is. And then I could show it to her and tell her that it's the line of lineage of the females in your legacy line. That's different. Right? I made sure that she could see herself inside of that, because that's the type of shoot that would be perfect for her right now at this stage in her life. Okay. You've got to be able to make them see themselves in it. All right. I shared this story inside of Posers, and I wanted to share it here with you too, because I wanted you to see that I practice what I preach. And I wanted you to see what that actually looks like. But I also want to be honest that this collaboration didn't come from a strategy session. It came very naturally as a Saturday errand, and it was a decision to go look at, planters instead of going to Lowe's. But now that it's in the works, I will build out a full business plan and I will put strategy behind it. The alignment is what made this collaboration so effortless and so easy, but you can create the conditions for this type of collaboration for it to find you too. You can do that by knowing who you are, living that out loud publicly, and showing up in the places that actually call to you. And as I go through this process of building this collaboration with Grouse House, I will keep you up to date on how the whole thing pans out and whether or not it actually ends up feeding both my business and hers. So until next time, I obviously want you to keep building, and I want you to get your boots on the ground and go market your business. We, as a collective unit of photographers, we only have about 2 months until we are locking in dates for our fall calendars. If you want to have a poser's fall, which I am defining as like a fall where you make the most amount of money possible, or just the most amount of money that you want because you have uncapped your revenue and you are strategically running your marketing and you are closing deals in the sales room like a bad bitch, then if you want to have a poser's fall like that, then the work for that has to start now. Okay? That's it. That's all I've got for you today. Bye for now, posers. Okay, so that is a wrap on this episode of the Posers Podcast. If you loved it, please subscribe, rate, and review, because honestly, algorithms are needier than all of our ex-boyfriends combined, and ladies, I need all the help I can get. If you've got thoughts, questions, love letters, even hate mail, please send them my way. I actually read every single one of them. So until next time, stay bold, stay messy, and don't let the bullshit win. Tits up, ears open, and go build something incredible. Bye for now, friends.